Lisa Heneghan is a passionate advocate of women in tech, diversity in the workplace, and is a Big Four consultancy chief digital officer. After putting circuit boards together at her father's factory, Lisa was hooked on technology and embarked on a career working with some of the world's biggest and most influential software companies like Oracle, EMC, Sun Microsystems, and then she pivoted into the consultancy world with Deloitte and her current organization, KPMG. We talk about what KPMG are doing to build a neurodiverse workforce for the future, the potential macro impact of this working from home revolution, especially what that means for creativity and mental health too. We also cover what holds people back in achieving their goals, which was really interesting, especially ambitious goals, and much, much more. This is a fantastic interview with so many snippets of wisdom. I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. Lisa's great. It's Lisa Heneghan. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me, Gareth. I'm looking forward to this.
At long last, I've been in anticipation of talking to you for quite a while, and I'm excited to unpack a couple of things. You've had an incredible career. But let's start off with a question I always ask early in the interview. You're the Chief Digital Officer of KPMG UK. What does good leadership mean to you, Lisa?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And I think there are two aspects for me, but all linked to one thing. I think a good leader is an agent for change. And that could be change for people personally or change for an organization. For me, leadership is about people seeing the art of the possible. So either for themselves and in what they could do in their career, or for a business and how a business could change and transform. And I have to say that I think when I look back on my career, one of the things that I see as my greatest achievements are when I actually see people who do progress and move on and achieve things they never thought they could.
Brilliant answer. No, I love that. So looking back now then, Lisa, in your, you're not quite done yet, I know that, but but looking back at your career thus far, what did you want to be? What did young Lisa want to be when she grew up?
Well, it wasn't anything to do with technology, I have to be honest. I really, in those days, which was back in the sort of 80s, really, I aspired to be a TV presenter or a newsreader, something like that, something on television. And if you think back to those times, it's interesting because there weren't really female role models in business. So as I've looked back on it over the years, it doesn't surprise me. I didn't aspire to have some great career or do things, but I did love the idea of that. And it was actually only a result of my father that I ended up in technology. It was never a plan for me. Initially, what I did when I realized it was going to be very hard to get into television or presenting, I actually then went for my second love, which was shopping. And I went on a management training course for Harrods, and I worked in Harrods. And in fact, that I was doing that in the year when Harrods was bombed by the IRA, and I was working that day. And having got through that day, many hours later, my family managing to find me because, of course, we didn't have mobile phones in those days. It made me think, is this really what I want to be doing? And it wasn't. I really didn't feel it was delivering for me, and it had been quite a traumatic day. So it was after that my father, who was in technology, said, come and actually join me and work for me. And that was the start of my career in tech.
What did your dad do then?
He trained and did a degree in geology. And at the start of his career, he went off to Persia and was designing the road infrastructure in Persia. But, a bit like me, he started with something and he thought, oh, this is not really doing it for me. And it was at the stage when the mainframe was just becoming something commercially used. And he saw an opportunity and he thought, that's it, I'm going to get into technology. So my father started working for, I think it was Burroughs initially, and was in sales in technology and very successful, probably the best salesperson I've ever known. And he was successful in his career, started a business ultimately which was building peripherals for different PC devices. I learnt both how to sell when I was working for him, but interestingly, he also forced me to go into the factory and learn some of the basics of technology. And I remember being in the factory soldering printed circuit boards. I was
Oh, wow.
really, really bad at it. So luckily, I didn't have to stay there too long.
Do you know what? It's amazing how many guests we've had on this podcast whose parents have had either worked for or had some sort of affiliation with IBM and IBM
Yeah,
mainframes. So I don't know. It was just obviously that was the beginning of business
absolutely.
IT, I suppose, wasn't it?
Well, and the interesting thing is, isn't it, over the years, people have said, oh, the mainframe's dying, the mainframe's dying, the mainframe's dying. It's still there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk said not long ago that the entire world banking and financial system is held up by IBM mainframes because there's all this legacy software that holds up a lot of the banking IT infrastructure, which the incumbent CTO after CTO doesn't want to touch it because he's terrified of it going down on his watch or her watch.
It works.
Yeah, absolutely. If it does the job, why change it, eh? So, what were the key milestones then in your career up until getting the job with KPMG?
I think in terms of milestones for me, there are two key milestones in my career. One was when I worked for Sun Microsystems, fantastic business. It really was an inspirational place to be at the time I was there through year 2000. It
Mm,
was incredible. And Sun was a very forward thinking organization. Probably you could argue too far ahead of itself in some respects. But
yeah.
they understood about alliances and the value of alliances. And I worked around alliances in those days. And it was through that I met the people that then brought me into consulting. And so for me, that was really important because
Sure.
I had never looked any further. I'd been very happy and very successful in everything I'd done. I suppose I'd never actually expected myself to have a career. It didn't feel like a career at that stage, if I'm honest. It felt like I had a job, which was a great job, and I enjoyed it.
So, you took a step into the consulting world. What was the difference?
Oh, I mean, it's so different. You can't even start to imagine because having everything I'd done until that point, it was really clear what success looked like and
Yeah.
what was good. And then you move into a consulting organization where there's a massive amount of ambiguity. And as an individual, actually, it's all about people understanding you and having a network and being able to get people to realize what you can do. And I didn't understand that. And so I found it incredibly hard. The first couple of years were probably the toughest thing. And I remember the first ever consulting engagement I did. I won't say who the organization was, but it was an organization in Canary Wharf. And we were doing a report for the CEO. And I remember every day going in on the tube, long days doing this work, going home saying, I'm going to resign the day I finish this. I hate this, absolutely hated it. And then we delivered the report, and the CEO absolutely loved it and said it was fantastic. And we got such amazing feedback. And that was it. It was like a drug.
You
It
were
just
hooked.
totally switched my
Yeah.
view. And I have to say, I've never ever looked back because the learning for me from that was you have to keep learning and you have to challenge yourself and you have to move out of the comfort zone that I'd probably been in for the career before then. It's okay to feel uncomfortable and to not necessarily feel happy with everything you're doing because if you keep at it, you can do well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to cast your mind back to two sort of historical moments within technology and business that you were involved with, I'm sure. First one, you talked about your time at Sun Microsystems around the turn of the millennium. That was an amazing and strange time, wasn't it, for the technology world in general? Because we had the Y2K thing and we also had the dot-com boom and bust. What was it like working within technology at that time?
It was an incredible, incredible time because, on the one hand, as you say, the year 2K, there genuinely was a sense of, is it all going to go wrong?
Yeah, is
And
the
so,
world going to end?
yeah,
It was crazy, wasn't it?
it really was. And it was an amazing opportunity. You know, we were doing so much business and people were investing in things that they wouldn't have invested in because you had this sort of compelling issue potentially going to hit. So it created great opportunity. And then it was all a bit of a sort of a damp squib when it happened and nothing happened and it was all fine.
Yeah.
The dot-com boom was just unreal. And particularly at an organization like Sun, which was so incredible because we were linked to so many of those businesses. We were the firepower behind many of those dot-com businesses. And they were incredible. And there was a danger that we all believed that was it and it was there to stay. And I think
Yeah.
there was a little bit that we probably got a little bit sucked into that view that there was some real substance behind this. It was devastating when that started to unwind. However, when I look back on it now, it was transformational. It was that time where people were looking at things in such a different way. And, there are so many of those people that you really have to respect when you look back on them now. It's not that the ideas weren't there. It was really that the markets just overhyped what those ideas were.
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
we didn't have, did we, the infrastructure and the internet in the way it is today to support those businesses to grow as fast as they could. So it
Sure.
was an incredible time.
It's a little bit like cryptocurrencies now, I suppose, isn't it? You know what I mean? There's a bit too much hype behind them, but you generally think that this is probably going to stick around.
Yeah, there's no doubt that, Web 3.0, crypto, all of that is going to really fundamentally change the world.
Yeah, I remember someone posted on Twitter not too long ago an article in The Guardian from, I think it was 1998 or something, with someone saying, quite a serious article saying that e-commerce and the internet was a fad and it would be over within the next couple of years and we'd all forget about it and it'd be gone. Yeah. But, there was a lot of critics back then, wasn't it? So I want to move forward, say 8 years now, okay? Because this is another historical moment that you were, I'm no doubt, involved with. You said you were involved in financial services, retail banking, Canary Wharf, all that type of thing. How has management consultancy evolved since you got into the space in 2004, 2005, was it?
Yeah.
What are the sort of the biggest differences between now and then, Lisa, in your view?
Well, I mean, it's absolutely fueled by technology, 100%. The differences are when I first started, what clients were looking for was advice. And, frequently it would be about the report that you'd produce, going in and helping them to work out their way forward, whether it be a strategy, an operating model, or, the way they source things. It was very much an advisory role. Now the world is moving so much faster and technology is so critical. They're looking for outcomes. Our clients need outcomes delivered. And so what we're seeing is that we have the expertise and the experience. You have to bring that together with technology to actually deliver insight way earlier in the whole process for clients and to help them to deliver change quickly. So as an example, in KPMG over the last few months, we launched in the UK a product business. And this was, really formalizing that ability to create product specialists and a team that rigorously take the insights that you have and build them into products that clients can then use to realize outcomes very quickly. And I think that absolutely is the future, that clients don't want reports that they put on a shelf. They want us to actually be there and help make change happen.
That really makes sense. But one thing I wanted to get you to unpack, Lisa, is in 2004, you probably walked into a very male-dominated world. Is that fair to say?
It's certainly very fair to say.
But I understand that you guys are doing a lot. Obviously, it's very different now, but there's still a long way to go, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a long way to go. However, we have moved a long way. I mean, when I think back to it, I was always the only woman in a room, or it certainly felt like that in 95% of the discussions that I was in. And it's something you sort of get used to. And I remember in those early years always saying, oh, well, it's okay. I've never felt on the back foot because of it. But I think that's That's part of what women condition themselves to say and to feel. We really have seen massive progress. I mean, if I look just in technology, particularly, technology was probably one of the worst areas. Technology and financial services, put the
Yeah.
two together.
It's strange that, though, isn't it? Do you think that's bizarre? Because when I was in school, the girls were probably just as good, if not better, than the boys at maths and things, all the crucial subjects. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. But
We do a lot of work. So we have an initiative called IT's Her Future, which I actually was the sort of sponsor that we started it 5 years ago, and it's made a massive difference for us. And one of the key issues there, Gareth, is when you look at how girls perceive technology, and this is still the case today, we go into schools with 10-year-old girls and we say, right, draw us up. When you think about technology and a career in technology, what do you see? They will draw men in round glasses, wearing sandals, very geeky. I think back to the 80s when I thought about technology, when I worked for my father, you had Sir Clive Sinclair, you had Bill Gates, you had,
Alan Sugar.
yeah, exactly. You think about it. Was it anything that really encouraged women to want to be part of that? It didn't feel that way. Now that's changed. You look now, and there are so many female role models around technology.
Yes, indeed there
And
are.
and actually, as we know, really to develop, when I talk about those products and needing to develop outcomes, you need diversity of thinking in order to create great things.
Yeah,
So the
definitely.
brilliant thing now is that's being understood far better. And also the nature of technology and the accessibility of it doesn't require everybody who works in technology to be a deep-rooted techie at heart. It requires very different skills about collaboration, seeing the opportunities. How do you work together? How do you interpret um, business issues? How are you open to learning? So I think it's a world which has become much easier for women to be part of.
Yeah.
However, we've still got a lot to do to change the perception within the schools and throughout. We've had a great initiative where we have a really inspirational lady who works for us, a lady called Safi Mirza, and she and a few others go out and they teach coding, and they go and teach coding to girls in schools. In fact, through lockdown, they opened out, and I think they taught 20,000 people across the world, all different countries, to code in Python, just to open people's mind to the art of the possible.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just fantastic to see what you can do. So we're making progress. It was massively male dominated, but we still have a long way to go. I think we've created parity at more junior grades, but keeping women in technology,
Yeah.
really driving that through an organization is tough.
Obviously, you're a consultancy business, though. You're doing some incredible things in KPMG. But what do you say to your clients and the companies you work with who are not as mature, let's call it, as KPMG?
Well, again, I think it's very much many of our clients like to hear about what we've done for ourselves. And
Yeah, sure. You walk the walk, then, I suppose, don't you?
yeah, totally. But also they challenge us. Clients are looking at us and saying, we want you to come to us with diverse teams. We need you to demonstrate you're serious about these things. And it's not just superficial, and it's meaningful. And I think that's true. Everything has to be authentic, doesn't it? So it's really about having those conversations up front, being prepared to challenge some of the expectations that clients may have to enable us to be flexible. And generally, those sort of conversations are treated with respect and valued by clients. So I don't think there's any organization that isn't having the same challenges and trying to address these things. And it's something that we have to get through together and actually work through what does work and what doesn't work. I don't think anything's perfect. I think it's an ongoing challenge, and particularly as you say, we're making progress on diversity, ethnicity, but also social diversity.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity is something I'm particularly passionate about. In technology, we should be the best for embracing neurodiversity. We really must get good at that. But that means you have to think about it in everything you do. You think about accessibility, you think about how you create an environment for people to thrive.
That's a really interesting topic. I interviewed the CIO of the Met Office, and he was talking about neurodiversity over and over again, as being the main thing that you need in your organization, which I completely agree with. But how do you basically go about that then, Lisa? In terms of how do you go about finding a more neurodiverse workforce? Is it through psychometric testing? Is it through just changing your processes to bring in people from different backgrounds? How would you approach that?
So I actually think we have a very neurodiverse population by default. In a business like ours, you actually do attract people in, and inherently many people maybe haven't been labeled as neurodiverse, but maybe neurodiverse. But the really important thing is creating an environment that can sustain people's success who are neurodiverse, because it's very different. So if you look at the performance management process, for people who are neurodiverse, you have to articulate and explain to them how to interpret some things. But the point is, the way they see things is very different. And we have to challenge ourselves to be able to understand these things and therefore judge people in different ways and help them in how they judge. And I work with some amazing people who've really helped me to go through the conversation and say, look, as I come into this, if you're promoting people, we get people to do panels. That can be incredibly hard for somebody in a particular neurodiverse sphere. So we've got to create an environment that enables them to succeed without putting them under pressure and expecting them to do something they just can't. I come back to what I said at the beginning about helping people to see the art of the possible and to think differently and do things differently. That's a big area where we can make a massive difference by helping people to understand that.
I wanted to ask you about creativity, okay, in the context of the modern work environment, okay? We live in this work from, you're at home now, I think, aren't you? And I work from home on a Friday normally. And basically, there's a lot of criticism of this work from home thing at the moment. I know Malcolm Gladwell was on another podcast saying that it's terrible for people's mental health. But there are a lot of people who are saying it's a good thing to have flexible working. And why on earth would you want to stand in a queue commuting, every day and wasting time? So productivity maybe increases if you are, working the full working day, if that makes sense. Well, what is your view on how this is going to play out? Have we found a happy medium now in terms of most companies being 3 days at home, 2 days in the office? Or do you think people need to just get back in the office? So many great ideas come from random serendipitous conversations, don't they? And we're losing that a bit, aren't we, Lisa?
I think it's a really important point. And I think, we've done some amazing things using technology and creating environments where people can be very, very effective in this hybrid world. However, that physical collaboration and the ability to just get together and to work through things and to bounce off each other, I think is incredibly hard to really do in this virtual world. But I don't think it's the answer of just everybody has to go back to the office full time. And in fact, we talk about the attrition challenges that you see across the world at the moment. And people expect flexibility. So what we have to be now is so much more deliberate in working out what we go into the office to do and what we do in this sort of environment. I mean, the reality is many of us are more productive in a lot of the transactional parts of our job doing it virtually like this. But exactly to your point, when we need to create and when we need to do some of that blue sky, it's very hard to be better than you are physically together. I do think there are interesting developments. When you look at technology, things like the metaverse, we're not there yet. Most people put on those headsets and think, oh, I feel sick. However, the technology is moving on. And some of my team have been testing this and doing the sort of the virtual whiteboarding together. And truly, it can start to feel like you are in a room together and you are starting to get more of that physical interaction. Sure. But we're not there yet. And actually, physical touch, you can't underestimate just somebody patting you on the shoulder.
Paradoxically, someone challenging you when you're not expecting it And even though it's uncomfortable in the moment, do you feel like if you nail it, you feel like you've had that little bit of growth, don't you?
And it's very difficult to read people's face when actually you never get eye contact, do you? So
Yeah, sure.
it creates a very different dimension. However, just one thing I think it is worth pointing out, that the virtual world has helped with diversity. So
Okay.
one of the things I do in KPMG is I lead what we call our female partner network in the UK. And it's a fantastic group, 200 and something female partners. And I took it over just before lockdown. And we used to have physical events, and you might get 30 to 50 of the partners would get together, and it would be great. We'd have a good conversation.
Mm.
However, I know from my own personal experience, I'm actually not the most comfortable person at walking into a room and having to make small talk and sort of, doing that sort of piece.
Yeah.
But in an environment that's virtual, the meetings that we do, we will often get 100 or so of the partner group attend, and people feel they can speak up. They can put their hand up, they can write into the chat. And so actually it gives people a voice that may not have a voice in a physical room. So there's definitely both sides of the spectrum here to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. So, what are you most excited about, Lisa, in terms of technology innovation globally? Innovations that are occurring anywhere in the world right now.
I'd bring this less about the technology and more about the way innovation and the way people are thinking about technology is, for me, the exciting thing is what's happened over the last couple of years as we've gone through, such a different environment, and the need for organizations to change whole business models so quickly is it's changed the thinking about technology, and it's changed from very traditional silos within organizations to starting to think across a value chain of a business, to starting to break down those barriers and think about how can technology really enable us to change much more quickly, to create a much more frictionless experience for clients or for our people. Now, I know that's not about technology, but it's technology which is the enabler of that
Yeah.
thinking. And honestly, I think it creates massive opportunities for organizations to not only optimize their business, but to break down the barriers, to collaborate more broadly across the business, and to then change quickly and address whatever hits us next, because the world is changing at such pace. And then, I think when organizations think that way, as things like Web3 and the metaverse come into their own, their ability to go and take advantage of those new technologies will be way better because they'll have broken down a lot of the silos.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that global digital transformation as well will essentially open the doors for a lot of talent who don't have access. Do you know what I mean? So I think people in, say, in an African country or in South America who would not have access to high paid digital jobs, I think we're going to have the floodgates are going to open for all that talent to come into the marketplace now. And that's quite exciting. Can you imagine the innovation that's going to come from there, from this untapped pool of talent? It's going to be incredible, isn't it?
It really is. And we've seen it through, even within our own organizations, our ability to bring capability, the best capability from anywhere in the world at any time is now so much greater than it was 2 years ago. But what you're talking about creates massive opportunity, but it creates massive challenge. How do you actually create the flexibility within organizations to be able to deal with talent across all those different countries, to create a connection into the business, to teach and learn? Because the point that you made about that physical interaction, you can have great skills, but people need to develop. They need to get to the next stage and to
Yeah.
learn new things. And you've got to create a mechanism that enables you to do that with a workforce that is far more dispersed in many different places. So it creates different challenges
Yeah,
for
sure.
organizations, and also to create that absolute loyalty and commitment to an organization because it's easier to move.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring this back to you then, Lisa. I'm really keen now. We're going back to you being, in your armchair again, looking back your your career. What advice would you give to your 21-year-old self?
Really importantly, it's not to constrain yourself by what you know today. It's to be open to what you could do tomorrow. And honestly, that held me back for half of my career. I didn't realize it. I wasn't unhappy, but I think so many of us, and particularly women that I know, we think we can only do what we know we can do. And it was by having great mentors who said to me, Lisa, I want you to go and do this. I want you to go and lead the acquisition of a business. And I'm thinking, but I've never done that before. But actually, what you realize, and we're particularly lucky in companies like KPMG, is we've got all of the expertise. So you can do anything if you have the people around you to support and help. And for me, that's the biggest learning. And I say it to my daughters, regularly. Don't worry. If you don't know how to do something, work out how you're going to learn to do it.
And get good people around you. But what would you say to people, though, who don't have that KPMG support function?
Well, I think it is about networks of forms, isn't it? And whether you have it within your organization or whether it is by accessing external networks, the great thing about the internet now is we all have access to different groups of people and to knowledge. So I don't think it's that you can't access it. I think you have to have an open mind to access it, and you have to be curious. And that's the other thing that, I actually think as an individual, I'm probably not as curious as I should be. So it's one of the challenges I've given myself is to really build that curiosity, because it doesn't matter how old you are, we keep learning. And probably that's what I would say is my luckiest thing, that I've been out of my comfort zone for much of the time for the last 20 years. And whilst it starts being daunting, it ends up being fantastic because we're learning something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you know what? I did jujitsu last night, okay? And I got beaten up 3 times and it was horrible. But when I went to bed last night, it was like, wow, that was incredible. It was just brilliant. It was humbling, Just it's so important to put yourself outside of your comfort zone, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, the only other thing I would also say, I'm not an example, a normal example probably of people in KPMG. I don't have a degree. I said to you, I left college, I went to Harrods and did a management training course. So I always know I'm not going to be the brightest person in the room, but what I can do is look at all these amazing people and be very lucky at how I can work with them and how I can learn from them and bring them together to do great things. I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I think you hit on the two most important. I've interviewed 58 business leaders now, okay, and there's certain things that come up all the time, and those things include curiosity, the ability to collaborate. If you've got those things, and by the way, loads of them didn't go to university. It's unbelievable how many people at the top of businesses are not university educated.
Yeah.
Which kind of says a lot, really, doesn't it? I think so. Yeah, but that's really, really good advice, Lisa. I think.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, won't it, in 10 years' time, whether that's still the same, because we obviously went through a period where our children, it became much more normal for everybody to start to go to university, and now we're going through another shift in that. It's
yeah, absolutely. The education system is evolving massively. And I think that's part of the problem. The education system inadvertently traditionally orientated young women towards certain careers.
Yes.
But I do feel that is starting to change now. Tell us a little bit about Lisa outside of work then. I know you're involved in a couple of endeavours here and there. What kind of occupies your non-work time?
When I'm not at work, I suppose I don't have massive hobbies per se. However, in my job, and when you think about digital transformation and what I'm doing as CDO, most of the things I'm doing are very long term. They're multi-year sort of things, and you don't see tangible progress on a daily basis. So when I'm not working, one of my passions is actually cooking. Doesn't sound very exciting, but the great thing is when you're doing things, you get the results and you see the impact it can have on people very, very quickly. So I do love that. I'm passionate about cooking and I love that. And then I'm actually passionate about the sea and where I live. And for me, and particularly through those very difficult times of lockdown, being able to go and walk by the coast and to see the change every single day, every different times of the day, it's different. I
Yeah.
find probably one of the most energizing things. And
Likewise, yeah.
I didn't know the UK really before lockdown, but now
Yeah.
for me, that's a passion, really going out and seeing
Yeah.
different parts of the country.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if we were going to go to the beach, we thought we'd have to go abroad, you know what I mean, before.
Yes.
And we found so many little gems within sort of a 2 or 3 mile radius of our house that we didn't know were there because we used to go for walks during the lockdown, you know what I mean?
Yes,
But
exactly as you say. I always thought I had to go abroad, and you don't.
obviously, I know you go down and walk on the seafront to sort of balance your mind out and things, which is I would definitely recommend. But you're in a very high pressure position, working for one of the big four consulting firms. What advice would you give to other executives to stay balanced and to get that balance right between work and life? You know what I mean? Is there anything do you cut off after a certain time? Do you make sure you get lots of sleep? Do you do yoga or whatever? I mean, I've heard all sorts on this front. What keeps you balanced and engaged?
So I do think it is very important to have boundaries. So as an example, for me, the weekends generally are protected. I really, really don't want to respond to emails or get involved in work things over the weekend.
Sure.
Now, very occasionally there might be something, and particularly, when you're in this sort of role, something might happen, but largely no. And I think it's very important as leaders that we don't respond to people who do start to feel that they should, send emails over the weekend or do things over the weekend, because we need to empower our people to be able to take downtime. And then the other thing is, in my day, I'm a morning person, so I'm really happy to start very early, but I really do try and protect the evenings because,
Yeah.
again, I'm not effective. I know the difference between when I'm good and when I can make
Sure.
things happen and when it's the wrong other way around. But the reality is you're constantly, your phone, you're getting messages right the way through the night. And so it would be very easy to be pulled into looking and responding. And even looking is not good, because looking starts to then
Yeah.
create pressure in your mind.
Yeah, sure. Like notifications on the phone, you've got to get a handle on them, haven't you? Because on a weekend, do you know what I mean? If you get an email notification, you're back in work mode for a while. If you're anything like me, you can't help it, can you?
And I think people do value it who work with you. They know it's okay for them also to take time out if you take time out.
Yeah, sure. Let's finish on this one then, Lisa. What book? I'm not sure if you're much of a reader, maybe you're more of a watcher or listener. But what piece of content, what book or comparable piece of content have you been inspired by in recent times?
There's many books that I have been inspired by. I think actually I'll answer it a slightly different way. And what I wish was, there are some books that I wish had been around when I was 21 and working out what I would do. So things like Sheryl Sandberg and Lean In, things like Michelle Obama, because they were books that if I'd had access to things then to make me understand maybe how my own mind was working, I think it would have made just such a massive difference for me.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. I've really taken a lot of value from our conversation. I'm sure many other people will as well. Thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast.
Thank you so much, Gareth. Lovely to meet you.
Wow, that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that. Lisa's great. And there's so many things that we could unpack there. The ones that stood out for me and the ones I'd like to draw attention to. Firstly, how to keep yourself balanced in a high-pressured role. All of our roles are high-pressured in some respect. Lisa's obviously is particularly high pressure. And she talks about work-life balance, which is something that sounds so simple, yet so many of us get it wrong. The first aspect of that was we talked about taking walks, a very simple thing, but I think is so important, is just getting out in the wildlife, forests, the seaside, whatever. Your brain will thank you for it. And also on the similar theme is taking your weekends back. I think too many people have their notifications on for emails and things on the weekends. You can set this up so they don't come through on the weekends. You need to give your brain some downtime. And I think you'll find that the quality of work that you deliver in your uptime will improve if you have more downtime. This in-between mindset of working, not working, it's not good for the quality of your work, I can assure you. And finally, I wanted to highlight the art of the possible. Lisa says this a couple of times in the interview. I love that saying. And I think what she means is believing in yourself. So many people hold themselves back with this imposter mindset. Sometimes you just got to back yourself and set ambitious goals and just go after them. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for downloading this episode. We really love doing this show and are absolutely humbled by all of the incredible people who download and listen, plus the incredible guests who take the time to come on and share their secrets and experiences with our listeners. Please can I ask that you take a couple of seconds to subscribe or follow the show. This small action means a lot to us and helps us greatly. Thank you. As you quite possibly have heard me mentioning in the past, we record the mass majority of our episodes at an amazing studio facility here in Cardiff at Tramshed Tech. Tramshed Tech is a collaborative community of entrepreneurs and scaling businesses geared towards supporting growth in tech, digital and creative industries across an ever-increasing collection of locations and partner locations, UK-wide and internationally. It really is the perfect place for your business to start up, scale up, accelerate or innovate. Head over to tramshedtech.co.uk or just search Tramshed Tech on your favourite social media platform.